Well, great. Hey, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. You have made it to What's the Plan? Introduce yourself. Let us know where you're coming in from. We were out last week. We missed all of y'all. Leah and I were talking last Thursday, which was Thanksgiving. We're like, gosh, it feels weird not to be here for.
I gotta say, I've come to really count on these chats.
Yeah.
I really have.
And
Okay,
Angie,
Arizona from
Angie in
Arizona.
Arizona wins the first here, just beat out Elizabeth in Forest Grove, Oregon, Indivisible. Great to see ya.
Right, and now we're seeing Bloomington, Illinois, Torrance, California, Wilmington, North Carolina, Albemarle, North Carolina,
Haddonfield, New Jersey.
Hatfield.
Where's Haddonfield, New Jersey?
Do not know. Indivisible of Franconia,
Franconia.
Virginia.
I've been on that part of the metro line before, accidentally. I think I fell asleep in my 20s. I was
Paducah,
riding.
Kentucky, Santa Cruz, Indivisible, Orangeville, California, Santa Fe, New Mexico, Richmond, Kentucky,
Oh, wait, we got Richmond, Kentucky and Richmond, California right next to each other. What are the chances?
Clackamas, Oregon.
Love Clackamas.
Oh, let's see. Sonoma County, Indivisible, Petaluma,
Bainbridge
Laguna
Island
Hills.
in
Oh,
Washington.
Maine.
Where's Wiley, Texas? You know where Wiley, Texas? We
Exit.
just got back from Texas. I don't know where Wiley. Let me know, Lori, where Wiley is. I'll look it up.
Saratoga, New York, Midcoast, Maine, Mount Vernon, Ohio, Boise, Idaho.
We have
Let's
not,
see.
we have that
Jackson,
point where it says
Mississippi.
like 99 plus new messages because everybody is joining. Hey,
Mhm.
I hope everybody had a great break, ate a lot of turkey or your turkey substitute, ate some mac and cheese, mashed potatoes. Leah, what was your favorite side dish for Thanksgiving?
My favorite. Oh, I just go straight for the turkey and the cranberry sauce. Like I'm not a sides. Ezra has a famous family tradition. I'm so glad I get to tell thousands of people about this. Ezra's family makes Ezra, how do you make smacky macky?
It's called Smacky Macky. It is very low rent. It is Kraft macaroni and cheese with Munster cheese on it. It sounds
A lot of Munster
a
cheese.
lot. It
Oh,
sounds
that's fair.
basically as good as it is. I highly recommend you experiment with it someday. Leah, we're having a lot of fun, but I think we're gonna have a lot of questions too.
Indeed. Let's get to it.
Okay, let's get into it. Welcome, y'all, to What's the Plan? I'm Ezra,
I'm Leah.
and we are your host for this afternoon. For What's the Plan? We come here because we're worried about democracy, and we think that the best way to fight for our democracy is actually do something. So while we talk about the news of the day, we have a couple updates to give y'all. A lot of what we try to focus on is what we can actually do. We have a bias towards action. That's what Indivisible is all about. So thank you for being here. Thanks for joining this December. We were off last week, which felt a little bit odd, and we missed this group of people because, gosh, we get a lot of comfort from knowing that there are folks in every nook and cranny of this country, and actually, we're going to talk about it also from overseas who are organizing together right now against the authoritarian overreach that we're seeing. And we're doing it together. So this is a chance for us to. I view this as a special space for us to actually come together and have kind of real talk conversations and not just watch a couple of talking heads or just read scripts and hear the news, but we actually, I feel like this is a real discussion, Leah. So you want to talk a little bit about what this discussion looks like?
Sure. So we're going to do a top line monologue with some of the big action items that we are working on together, but we're mostly going to do Q&A. This is going to be questions that are coming from the chat live. So if you've got a question, pop it in the chat toolbox or toolbar on the bottom of your screen. We will be taking them mostly from up the top of the chat. So upvote with that little thumbs up icon, the questions that you want to see, and we will try to answer as many as we can. If you are with an Indivisible group, please put that in your question. We like to know where questions are coming from. We like to answer questions from practitioners. This will be recorded. It will be sent out to everyone who registered. We're going to post links in the chat as we go along, resources, action items, etc. All of that is going to go out in the follow-up email. So if you miss it, do not panic. It will be coming to your inbox. Finally, just a note, we love the chat box. The chat box is big and beautiful and goes really, really fast. It is also normal in moments like this when we are talking about stuff that is incredibly important and incredibly scary and deeply personal for a lot of folks, for people to have really strong emotions. That is totally okay. What we do ask is that we do your part to keep the chat box constructive. We are a nationwide movement. We treat each other with respect, even when we disagree or are frustrated or scared. That is foundational to our ability to organize together.
That's right. The other thing, last time we introduced a new technological innovation, which was getting Leah her own mic.
I have my own microphone now. You will all be so relieved to hear this.
So
It's a big development
it's
for
a
us.
big development. So we each have our own mic now. So hopefully you can actually hear us and my voice does not overpower Leah's on the mic and it adjusts each time. So if you can't hear us, let us know. But If not, this is the new normal where you can hear both of us on the
Very,
same
very
Zoom.
exciting.
Incredible what technology can do these days. Okay, Leah talked about how us exercising respect is foundational to our ability to organize together. How do we actually organize together? It is in indivisible groups, locally led indivisible groups all over the country. Leah and I are talking to you here. We are not the leaders of this movement. The leaders of this movement are the indivisible group leaders who lead 2,500 or so indivisible groups in just about every congressional district in the country. And it is my distinct pleasure and honor to introduce a few of them to this group of folks. And so please welcome these new leaders from across the country in blue, red, and purple states in the chat with your emojis. I'm going to just read off a 10 or so of them that joined since we last met, y'all. Elliot with Pueblo West Indivisible in Pueblo West, Colorado. We've got Eric with Indivisible Mid Pinellas in Largo, Florida. We've got Jamie with Granby, Massachusetts Indivisible in Granby, Massachusetts.
Your guess is as good as mine.
Great. Jamie will correct me at some point. Debbie with Sherburne County Indivisible in Zimmerman, Minnesota. We've got Catherine with Indivisible Wilkes, North Carolina, in Wilkesboro, North Carolina. Sherry with Missouri River Indivisible in Bismarck, North Dakota. Welcome. We don't get a new North Dakota group every day, so that's great. Welcome, Sherry. Patricia with Wyceny Indivisible in Warsaw, New York. Wendy with Indivisible Sherwood in Sherwood, Oregon. We've got Michael with Indivisible Hunt County in Greenville, Texas. And that's 10. And normally I only do 10, but I make a special exception, y'all, when we have international groups oh, wait, I missed one more. Port Ludlow Indivisible in Port Ludlow, Washington. That's Peggy. Then two more from international groups we had join the last couple of weeks. One is Indivisible Porto in Porto, Portugal. Love it, John. Welcome to the movement. God, I would love to go to
I
Porto.
know.
That would be
If you need us to come speak to you, please
right.
let us know.
Happy to join anytime. And also David with Indivisible Barcelona in Barcelona, Spain would also be pleased just to do a stopover in Porto on the way to Barcelona anytime. That sounds great. But welcome to the movement, y'all. Welcome everybody who's joined. Sorry if I didn't get to call out your new Indivisible group, but know that you are welcome here. We need you. We are on our way to 3.5% of the population organizing against this authoritarian takeover. That's how we get democracy to reassert itself. So welcome, welcome, welcome. Um, Leah, I was going to cover Tennessee, but actually I've been talking a whole bunch. Why don't you cover what's the plan in Spotify, and then I'll cover Tennessee. Is that cool?
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. Absolutely. So first of all, we are coming off a holiday weekend that I know many of us were very active during as part of the We Ain't Buying It campaign. This was a cross-movement campaign. We came together with the Target 3, with Black Voters Matter, with Working Families Party 5051, and a ton more folks across the movement to collectively send a message to a set of Trump enablers. Target, who dropped their DEI policies, Home Depot, which has been silent as ICE raids have been ripping apart families on in their stores and on in their parking lots, and Amazon, which is owned by Jeff Bezos. Do I need to say more? Do I need to say more?
I
No,
think you don't need to say
I don't
anything.
need to say more. Right. And the basic idea here was we were going to choose a set of targets. We were going to collectively pause on our spending with those folks in order to send a message about the fact that we are directing our dollars towards companies and towards places that are not funding our oppression and that are not preemptively folding to Donald Trump and his MAGA agenda. Instead, shopping local, giving to charity, focusing on small businesses, particularly Black-owned, minority-owned, immigrant-owned businesses, making sure that our money was staying with the community instead of going to these big mega corporations. We've had a successful weekend. I know that there were a bunch of indivisibles who were out in front of Targets, who were out in front of Home Depots to help spread the word about this campaign. We're also still gathering data because this is fundamentally one of the first times that we've been doing this kind of economic campaigning. And so we really want to have a full assessment of exactly what was the impact. What we know on the top line is that while this was an overall, while there was an overall increase in sales for Black Friday, there was a decrease in the number of items sold, which suggests that consumers, while there is still some energy around Black Friday, there is a pinch that people are feeling overall, and there's a decrease in the amount of overall volume of purchasing that is happening. We're going to be digging in as we get more information about exactly how those companies experience Black Friday, but also what we want to hear from you is, were you part of this, right? So we've got a survey that we're going to be bumping in the chat, because fundamentally we want to make sure that we understand, how did people engage with this movement and how did they engage with Black Friday?
Can I just
Um,
say, I do think this is really important for us as we try new tactics. I think we've said before that one of the measures of a successful democratic opposition is that you're not just doing the same thing over and over again. You're trying new things. And this kind of economic pressure is new for us. And so this survey isn't, I think sometimes there are surveys out there that go, they're just like, please fill out this survey so we can ask you for money
we
or something like
actually
that.
these surveys.
We actually want to know. We actually want to know what is working, what isn't working, how can we improve this so that we can expand on this kind of tactic going forward.
That's right. That's right. Okay, wonderful. And then the other item that I want to give an update on is Spotify. So it is the time of the year when a lot of people in your social media might be posting their Spotify Wrapped. This is the summary of the songs that they've listened to the most, the analysis of what kind of listener they are. Spotify tries to make this as cute and fun as possible in order to promote itself. It doesn't land quite the same way when you've got a company that is facilitating the terror and the deportations and the attacks on our communities that ICE is promoting. And so fundamentally, what we are asking for folks to do is to make a narrative intervention in this moment. Reminder, first of all, if you are still paying for Spotify, cancel your subscription. Don't use Spotify's free version. We'll post links in the chat for how to do that. But what we're asking folks to do this week is, instead of sharing your Spotify Wrapped this year, share our Wrapped theme posts, which are calling on others to cancel Spotify. We want to make sure that we are interrupting this cycle of free promotion for Spotify with a reminder, a gentle, non-shaming reminder to folks that that Spotify is continuing to facilitate the mass deportation agenda, and that as long as they are, they won't be getting our dollars. So use that social media content and engage, have gentle, non-shaming conversations with friends about the Spotify boycott, encourage them to sign on, encourage them to swap from sharing their Spotify Wrapped to sharing some Spotify Unwrapped content that focuses on its role in promoting this deportation agenda. Collectively, we're going to continue to hammer home this point that you don't get those good vibes when you are facilitating the Trump deportation agenda.
So we have content that folks can just
Yeah,
post
we
in
have.
response. If you have a
That's
friend who
exactly
posted, yeah, that's great.
right. We've got a social toolkit. It's all ready for you to go. Click to post. You can do it.
So we've got links to that. And I will just say, I don't know, I've used Spotify for more than a decade and had a lot of problems. I mean, the Joe Rogan stuff, the way that they treat artists, there have been a lot of reasons to switch for quite some time. What I'm hoping is, like it was for me, I hope for many, this running ads to recruit for ICE is the final straw. That this
Mhm.
convinces people that it is no longer cool, it is no longer socially acceptable to just continue financing this operation. That in addition to running ICE ads, is engaging in a lot of bad behavior that's hurting the music industry broadly. So join in, let us know how it's working. We're going to keep on building on this to put pressure on this company to stop recruiting for the secret police force. Um, with that,
Over to
Leah,
you.
should I talk about Tennessee a bit?
Yes.
So, folks may have heard that there was a special election in Tennessee a year ago, last November. There was a congressional and presidential election, you might remember. And in Tennessee 7th, there was a 22-point Trump victory and a 21 and a half point Republican congressional candidate victory in Tennessee 7. 22 points. That's what it was. Afton Bain, former Indivisible organizer, community organizer, state representative, incredible dynamic leader, ran a campaign that brought the nation's attention to Middle Tennessee, to Tennessee 7. And she closed that gap by 13 points. 13 points, y'all. This is astounding. Now, look, would you rather win than lose? Absolutely. But I do not consider a 13-point swing anything to sneeze at. If you were to extrapolate out that 13-point swing and look to the midterms next year, you're not looking at a blue wave. You are looking at a tsunami. We're talking 40 plus House Republicans in danger. 40 plus House Republicans in danger. Forget the House. The House is gone. The House is gone for the Republicans. The Senate, you look at Iowa, you look at Nebraska, you look at Maine, Michigan, Minnesota, North Carolina, Georgia. Good luck with a 13-point swing. Good luck with a 6-point swing. My God, this is huge. What this tells us is a couple of things. One, props to Afton. It is hard to run for office. It's especially hard to run for office in a deep red district. It is especially hard to run for office if you don't have the political support of everybody from the get-go. She built this campaign into something that everybody was talking about. That does not just happen. Incredible candidate, incredible work, a lot of bravery and a lot of leadership that goes into that. But I also think this says something about the environment we're in right now. A year ago, it seemed like Trump and this regime were inevitable and irresistible and permanent. The conventional wisdom was that they are here to stay and that the smart move is for Dems to just get with them, go along, and hope that something good happens. That's not what Afton did, and that's not what many people around the country did. The elites, yeah, they capitulated. We saw this from universities to law firms to businesses to media institutions, tons of capitulation among the elites, but actual people on the ground, indivisible group leaders, people showing up at Hands Off and No Kings and May Day and Good Trouble Lives On and Labor Day, folks around the country said, no, we're not going to put up with this. And the wheels are coming off, y'all. The wheels are coming off. I wrote about this in the newsletter earlier this week. In the last couple of weeks, it feels like there's been a vibe shift. And I think it's a combination of we had the Democrats actually start to fight back with the shutdown. We had the largest peaceful protest in American history. We had then the incredible election results a few Tuesdays ago, probably the best election results in a decade. Then we had the Epstein files come out. And then we had Marjorie Taylor Greene say she's resigning. And then we have Afton swinging 13 points of plus 22 district. Trump isn't looking inevitable anymore. He's not looking permanent anymore. And smart people around the country are looking at this guy and thinking, wait, maybe the smart move isn't to fall in line. Maybe this is temporary. Maybe this isn't the Trump era. Maybe this is the No Kings era. That's really, really good for the future. It doesn't mean we're out of the woods yet, but I look at a 13-point swing and I can't help but feel optimism. So if you are watching this and you made some calls, if you sent some postcards, if you sent some money to Afton, thank you. You were part of this win. And if you didn't yet, you're going to have a lot of chances to do this in the weeks and months to come as we head into primary season and the general election where we're going to wipe the floor with this regime. Leah, any other thoughts on Afton?
Well, I just want to name
Yeah.
one thing that I think is really important about this. So, we've had special elections that have had big swings before. Usually, the way you get a special election huge swing is because you have a low turnout election where Democrats are energized and Republicans just don't turn out. That's not what happened here. The turnout in Tennessee's 7th was comparable to the 2022 midterm election turnout. It was like 199 or 100% to the
Yeah,
turnout.
that's right.
And so if you're a Republican and you look at a special election and there's like pretty low turnout and you're like, well, that's a bummer, but it's not comparable to what's going to happen when you've got a midterms. It's nationalized. There's lots of attention and energy, et cetera, et cetera. But if you look at this and what you see is both sides were energized, both sides turned out, and what we made a 13-point shift in the margins, that is going to scare you a lot because that means that this is a much more comparable data point for what you're going to look at when you go into 2026. So a lot of people who maybe they weren't freaked out by a big shift in a previous special election are looking at this and they're like, oh, that's not good. That could be me.
I think there was a quote before the election that was something to the effect from a Republican operative that said, if it's a single digit election, we're going to be really quaking in our boots. And then it was a single point election. And keep in mind, this wasn't, to your point, there was high turnout.
Right.
The Republicans did everything they could to save this guy. In a plus 22 race, they dropped millions of dollars. Trump himself was posting about this race, trying to generate turnout. You had the heavy hitters come out, and the best they could do was a 13-point swing against them. Incredible. Uh, eh, Again, I feel cautiously optimistic is where I would say. We have to continue building on this. It ain't over till it's over, but we're heading in the right direction. And let me just say, I can't wait to see where Afton Bain goes next. She is an incredible leader. She's not going anywhere. She's going to be in the spotlight, I'm sure, and we really need her on the national stage. So excited to be a small part of her political history and looking forward to seeing where she goes next. With that, Leah, should we go to questions?
Yeah.
Okay, we've
Do it.
got top question is, and a reminder, you can submit and vote for questions. Let us know if you're in an Indivisible group and we'll call you out. And we'll get to it. So, first question is from Chelsea. We talk a lot about needing the Democratic Party that will fight like a true opposition party. To me, their silence is deafening when our commander in chief is literally napping through the cabinet meeting and posting 160 crazy things on Truth Social the night before. When Republicans railed against Joe Biden, quote, for being too old, they got that story to dominate the news cycle. Can't we push Democrats to do the same when it's actually true? How can we get our current members of Congress to make a bigger deal about this in the news and turn it into a recurring headline, just like Epstein? Great question, Chelsea. Thoughts on the Democrats' messaging strategy right now?
Yeah, this is a really interesting place because one of the ongoing challenges that we have around messaging with Trump, and this has been true since 2017, is that it is hard to capture like the malevolence and the incompetence at the same time. And it's like actually quite hard to build
Yeah.
out
Yeah.
messaging frames that capture like he's corrupt and he's authoritarian and he's also, an old guy who's dozing off in meetings and watching AI clips and believing that they're real. All of that is tough to fit into a single sentence that kind of coherently tells a story. And so there's a lot of like, which of these do you lean on in order to successfully get to voters? The idea that this guy is not for you and you need to go in another direction. And, just candidly, it feels like right now where people have landed is a real push around he is falling down on the job on the economy. He is hurting your pocketbook. You've got the very strong, the economy's out of control, vote prices are rising for voters, healthcare costs are exploding because of Republican policies, and he doesn't care and he's not doing anything about it. That message, I think Democrats have been they've been hammering it home. Now, obviously, we just spent a month campaigning to keep Democrats strong during a shutdown that was the perfect vehicle to deliver that message. And it was working. And it did work until we had an abrupt fold by Democrats that limited the ability to continue hammering home that message. But where we're able to hit it, it is good. Simultaneously, so much of the no kings framing is around kind of the authoritarian threat, right? It's the idea that this guy is governing like an imperious, out of control, would be authoritarian, that it's un-American, that we don't do kings in this country, et cetera, et cetera. But I do think it's fair to say that that framing is kind of grounded in the idea that this guy is a threat to you rather than that he's kind of a sleepy out of, et cetera. I thought you look like you have thoughts, Ezra.
I've thought, I mean,
It's really, I mean,
I
this is
agree.
an actual challenge.
I agree. So, like, I agree with a lot of what you're saying here, but like at a meta level, what Chelsea is asking
Yeah.
here is like,
Why keep them
there's
survive a
things like,
message?
yeah, like Dim's like, why are they always wet blankets? Why aren't they able to jump on something and just hammer it, hammer it, hammer it? Why aren't they able to throw punches? Like,
Yeah,
there's almost
that's
this
fair.
visceral, small c conservative response from many Democratic leaders and individual Democratic members. Like, wait, why don't you go for the jugular? Like, hit them on this. They look ridiculous on this. I think always about Obama wearing a tan suit to some briefing, and it was like a national news story for weeks that he wore a tan suit because somehow it was disrespectful to the office, like an absurd thing that nobody actually cares about, but Republicans made a story. So, and I'm thinking actually in the last week, I've seen two things from Hakeem Jeffries that just drove me mad. One was him talking about Trump. You got to hand it to Trump for closing the borders, for securing the borders. No, hey, let me be clear. You never have to hand it to Trump. You never have to hand it to
That's
this
true.
regime. You never have to give them some credit for doing something good. Screw those bastards. They are an authoritarian regime that has systematically undermined the law and the Constitution. Do not hand it to them. You do not need to look reasonable doing that. And then this praising of Donald Trump for pardoning Cuellar, this corrupt piece of shit in Congress,
Mm-hmm.
this loser Democrat who votes like a Republican. You're praising Donald Trump for pardoning him? No, that is not where Democratic electorate is. And it's also the kind of thing that gets you not quoted in the paper because you sound milquetoast. You don't sound real.
Well, in that case, you do get quoted in
Well,
the
you
paper,
do.
which
I
is
mean,
worse.
we're right. And it's worse. So I actually do think there is something here that it's not quite just generational and it's not quite ideological. There's something about the kinds of people that sometimes get elected to these Democratic seats that forces them into this just bland language that doesn't speak to people. And so what I would encourage Chelsea and other people who are trying to feel like, how do we get real fighters, people who can really communicate? Well, good news, Chelsea, you got a primary. You got a primary coming up. We are in a primary season, and I'm not saying it's as easy as saying this candidate has this position or has this stance towards leadership, but you're going to know. You're going to know who's got the goods, who can actually communicate, rally behind them, because we need more people who understand the 21st century media environment and understand how to break through. And we don't have enough of them. We have some of them. We have some of them. Like we have like the Chris Van Hollens and the Chris Murphys and the Maxwell Frosts and the AOCs, people who can break through, but they're in the minority. They're really in the minority, and I do think we need to build up our bench of good communicators in the Democratic Party. The time to do that is the primaries.
All right.
One ran in on the first question. Okay. Let's go on
You've
to
achieved your Ezra rant. Ezra goes on a rant
that
KPI.
wasn't
Look at
staged.
that.
I'm sorry. It just came up and I'm
Yeah.
feeling it. Okay, Laura, yes, yes.
I do. I'm not. I endorse all of that.
Great.
I do think there is a volume problem because you actually do have to choose what message today you are going to hit as hard as possible, right? And or at least two messages.
I disagree. The news cycle is 24 hours long, Leah. Like, are you owning the message today? Tomorrow it's going to be something else.
Okay.
Tomorrow it's something else. Hit today. Come out swinging today.
There, I think you can hit as many as three messages in a day. I do not think you can hit an unlimited number. And for example, I think like there are sometimes choices between are you hitting a Trump is incompetent, Trump is no longer fit for the office message, or are you hitting a Trump's administration committed war crimes? And here is the video of them blowing up innocent, like unarmed men on a ship, and who the hell gave the order to do that message? Like those are actually, if you want an all hands on deck demand for something to happen, you do actually have to choose which one of those you're demanding today. So,
Yeah.
anyways,
I
we
think
can agree to
they
disagree.
with the Andor quote, with the regime's atrocities outpace our ability to comprehend it, something to that
I
effect.
mean, yeah,
Yeah.
actually, yes.
So I agree. I both agree with that, and I think our communicators just aren't up to snuff. They're operating in this kind of 1990s form of politics where you look at what polls the highest,
This
and
is
that's
true.
healthcare or
This is
that's
true.
prices, and regardless of what the question is, you just go back to healthcare prices. I just don't think that works.
That I agree with. That we can agree on.
See, even Leah and I can agree, y'all.
We're married. I can agree.
Great. Okay, Nancy asks, how can we help the Fight Club? Oh, this connects. Sanders, Warren, and other senators who formed this alliance to push back on Schumer. So this is from FCCP, RA Indivisible in Western Mass. For folks who don't see it, this was a report. It was Sanders, Warren, I think Chris Van Hollen, Chris Murphy, a couple of others formed this. They're quoting it the Fight Club, which is basically an effort to fight back. The number one thing that I would look at, again, sorry to be a broken record on this, are the primaries coming up. We have a set of Senate primaries coming up. And look, we've talked a lot about Schumer on this call and elsewhere. I have my problems with Schumer, but I also don't think it's just a Schumer problem. He is reflecting a caucus that supports his type of behavior. He is largely reflecting what that caucus wants. And so if you want better leadership, if you want this fight club to grow, elect more fighters in the primaries, y'all. There are competitive primaries in Michigan, in Minnesota, in Texas, in Maine. These are places that are more likely than not going to have a Democratic senator, or at least they've got a shot of having a Democratic senator. Is that Democratic senator going to be a fighter, or is that senator going to be somebody who backs up the capitulation caucus of the party? That's up to us. So I think that is the most practical way in the near term to directly support that fight club. Leah, other thoughts on for those folks who are fighting, how best to support what they're doing? You need some water?
I just immediately started chopping. You keep going.
Well, that's all I got on the Fight Club. But you can come. I mean,
Um,
the first rule about Fight Club is to talk about this Fight Club to other people and tell them we need more members of this Fight Club in the Senate. And here are the Senate candidates who I am supporting, and let them know why.
I think the other thing I fully agree. I think the most important lever is really around how do you expand the Fight Club with more people who are aligned and who are willing to challenge leadership over the course of this cycle. I do also think that every senator likes positive reinforcement, and most elected officials do not get as much positive
Oh, that's
reinforcement
true.
as you might expect. And
Yep.
so I'm really curious, did people call the senators who are mentioned in that Fight Club and say, hey, I saw that you're part of this. I'm really thrilled to see that. If you are interacting with these folks, if you're attending a town hall, if you're attending something where you might be in person with them, make clear that you really appreciate this play. The Senate is not a place that is historically like one of the very, very strong in collective organizing. That's just the House has much more of a history of, the caucuses successfully being the base of organizing. Senators tend to operate a little bit more independently of each other. They kind of bounce off each other. So the fact that there is this hub coming together, that's really good and positive. So can you give people positive reinforcement? Can you donate to their campaigns? Can you invite them to speak if they're your constituent? Like, what can you do to help people understand that because they're part of this, you're more excited about them?
Yep. That's a good idea. The positive reinforcement so rare in Congress. Leah, like we were both congressional staffers, y'all. People normally get in touch with members of Congress when they're pissed off. That's just the reality.
Right.
If you are one of the few who gets in touch because you're like, hey, you did a good thing, just call in and say thanks.
Yep.
There's a chance your message will get printed out and rushed to the
Yeah,
boss. I've
that's
seen that happen. Hey, somebody said something good about us.
I remember the people who said nice
Yeah,
things about us when
yeah.
we were.
Okay, thanks for the question, Nancy. Okay, next question. Teresa, Jimmy Kimmel spent 10 minutes in his monologue last night talking about his Spotify playlist. It doesn't seem as if the pressure campaign is working. Are there plans to reach out through social media to top artists like Bad Bunny to ask them directly to pull their songs from the platform? Thanks for engaging on the Spotify campaign, Teresa. Look, well, I've been talking a lot, Leah. You thoughts on Spotify? I've got some though.
You go for it.
Well, so I would say we are trying to get the Spotify campaign to take off. And the only way the Spotify campaign is going to take off is if we try a lot of stuff and something catches fire and then more people hop on board. So right now, the push is for Spotify Wrapped. We are trying to inject this into the media ecosystem. But, there's not like some multi-million-dollar budget where we pay a lot of people to do this. This is a grassroots movement. It's led by people who decide to do it. I would highly recommend if you want this to take off, work with your local Indivisible group, send out a message to everybody on this list with clear instructions of this is what we are all doing. Let's make a big splash. But we need your help to do it. It's not going to just happen on its own. It's going to happen if we jumpstart this engine and it becomes part of the cultural experience of this season that, yeah, there was Spotify Wrapped, but every time somebody posted about it, they got some feedback about the secret police force that Spotify is helping to fund.
Yep.
So I agree with you. We're not where we need to be yet, and it's really a bummer that Jimmy Kimmel, who is
Oh, we
was
love.
who we love for pushing back against the regime, is not directly on board. But it tells me that we have more work to do to jumpstart it. We are not dropping this though. I mean, until Spotify stops running ads to recruit for the secret police, we will be on them. We are not letting go. The Target campaign boycott has been going on for how long, Leah?
Almost a year now, since February.
Almost a year now. How many
Very excited
years
for
did George Washington boycott British goods? Years and years.
this. What?
Years and years. Boycotts last a long time, y'all.
Okay.
We should be engaging. This is not just a 2-day thing. This is something that we're going to have to apply pressure. We're going to have to innovate tactics, and we're going to have to pull more people in order to build the kind of pressure we need.
The other thing I would add on this is, we've been talking all year about how do you launch and how do you try and how do you test corporate campaigns, right? Because, there are moments like Jimmy Kimmel when it's just an all hands on deck, massive organic outpouring of outrage moment. And then there's like intentional campaigns that get built up around a plan and get popularized and fostered over time. We are not in a position where we're literally just going to wait and sit on our hands until the next organic moment of outrage. We will jump on those when they come. But in the meantime, we are going to test some things like Spotify, which is around can we inject intentionally a strategy into the atmosphere?
And I think I just finished a book on the Revolutionary War by Gordon Wood. Highly recommend. I think
Is that
Washington.
where
Yeah, I
Washington
think
came from in this
there was
conversation?
like a line that Washington like kept on boycotting even after the Revolution because he was just pissed at the British.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate that. Okay, Bill and Karen ask Indivisible. Oh, from Indivisible Twin Cities. Hey, is there any data showing if the We Ain't Buying It campaign reduced sales at Amazon, Home Depot, and Target over the Black Friday weekend? Leah had some stats on like the number of goods being purchased, but also this is where the survey that we're putting around really is
Yeah.
important to us because we're trying to better understand how successful was the spread of this. How many people took part? What was your experience doing it so that we can build on it? But Leah,
Yeah.
other evidence?
Do a longer report back on We Ain't Buying It next week. So stay tuned for that. Like we do want to actually be able to offer you a little bit more analysis of what we think worked and did not work because we're all, like I said, we're all learning. This is a corporate campaign. This is a new test for us.
Robert from CBFD, Indivisible in San Diego, following up on the great scrape ice out of Home Depot protest near LA, where they brought and then returned the ice scrapers. What do you think about the idea of targeted mass purchase and then return of various low value items as a supplement to targeted boycotts? This could be done at Target and Amazon as well as Home Depot. Probably best if there's a specific ask of the corporation that would be tied to the cessation of the tactic. Now, my understanding is we've had conversations
Yeah.
with the legal team about to what extent
Yeah.
we're able to push this. And for folks who don't know, this was a tactic where a lot of folks bought ice scrapers at Target, long lines, or sorry, at Home Depot, long lines to get them, and then they went and returned them, long lines to return them. And it both got a lot of press and tied up Home Depot quite a bit. Pretty creative tactic. But Leah, thoughts on us pushing it organizationally?
So this goes in the category of, creative ideas that someone is advancing that we are not organizationally advancing, and that's just because of the ways in which we're thinking about corporate campaigns and our own particular ability to contribute. I could have a longer description of this, but I'm honestly like not ready to give it to you right now. But the short answer is great if somebody is. It's not a place where we're going to be able to get involved.
We can't drive the
Yeah.
campaign,
Mhm.
unfortunately, but
Yeah. Yep.
onward. Okay, Chelsea says, "How is Afton and and our Nashville Indivisible friends? Have you talked with her and or the group leaders?" So I haven't talked with Afton since the election, but I know that she and a lot of the team is very proud of what they accomplished there. Look, an election loss is hard, but a 13-point swing is incredible, y'all. And I don't, like I said, I don't think we've seen the last of Afton. I think we're going to see a lot more. And I think one of the positive benefits of running a big, inspiring campaign in a place that normally doesn't see any kind of political activity like that is that people start believing that something more is possible. That maybe Tennessee isn't a quote unquote red state. Maybe it's not Trump country. Maybe it's just politically apathetic. Maybe it's a non-voting state, not a red state. Maybe if we put the kind of energy that's necessary to organize these communities, we'll actually get a different outcome. And I think one of the failures of the Democratic Party for so long is an underinvestment in quote unquote red and rural areas. There are a lot of folks out there who believe that they are alone because there is no formal Democratic Party infrastructure and there are no folks organizing them. But once you actually get into these communities and start talking about the failures of the Republican Party and the failures of the old-fashioned Democratic Party, you start finding a lot of common ground there. And what I'm excited about in Middle Tennessee is this generating just reverberations of more organizing going forward, both for Afton, but more broadly for the community. Um,
I always think about the real ones, the folks who were with us in 2017. I remember in 2017 the very first special election that came up, which was John Ossoff running in, I want to say Georgia's seventh district,
Georgia
Georgia's
Six.
sixth district,
Georgia
Georgia's
Six.
sixth district.
Yeah.
Gosh, it's been a long time. Um,
Oh, I love
and
that. Yeah.
this was
This is
it
great.
was a very, very uphill race, right? We poured a bunch into it. There were a ton of indivisibles who were doing everything they could, knocking doors all over the district. I remember calling them the night that John Ossoff lost.
We were
The
sure he
first
was
time
going to
around, we
win
were.
too.
I was not sure he was.
I'm an
You
optimist. I
wrote the
was
press
sure.
release.
I wrote the press release that he was going to
Huh.
win. Yeah.
We called them the night that the race was declared for Karen Handel, the Republican, and I remember them being really, really pumped
Well,
because
oh, I remember us calling to cheer them up. We're like,
yeah,
oh,
yeah,
they lost. That's a bummer. We're going to call the group leaders to cheer them up. And we found them in a raucous bar. They were somewhere
yeah.
where there was a celebration.
Very loud. And they were like, "What do you mean? We're purple? We're gonna hold this lady accountable, and there's another general election coming up." And you know what? A year and a half later, they had Representative Lucy McBath. And 4 years later, John Ossoff is a U.S. Senator. No one knows where Karen Handel is. I assume she's a lobbyist somewhere.
Probably corporate loyalty stuff, or
Mhm.
maybe she switched sides. Maybe she found the light.
Yeah,
But probably not. But Lucy McBath won. Then she won re-election, and John Ossoff made it to the Senate, which gave us the 50 votes we needed in order to pass the BBB under the Biden administration, the largest climate bill in history. Obviously, not everything went perfectly, but that is a story of a Newt Gingrich's seat, a Republican seat that never was supposed to go Democratic, suddenly producing not just a Democratic representative, but also a Democratic senator. More to come from Afton, guarantee you. Um, Okay, KS asks, what do you think about the Election Truth Alliance's conclusion that vote tallies skew extremely abnormally Republican as turnout increases, most recently for the Tennessee special election and previously for many critical 2024 counts? Will Indivisible help push for a manual recount in Tennessee? Leah, you were talking to me about, you're a little bit deeper on this because you've done some
Yeah.
on this.
I have not dug into like I saw some chatter about this earlier today. Here's what I would say overall. I think there has been a lot of chatter with the Election Truth Alliance, with a number of other organizations or a number of other folks online around allegations about the 2024 election having been rigged, and rigged in like the literal sense of votes were changed in order to alter the outcome, not rigged in the classical sense that American elections are rigged, which is massive amounts of voter suppression targeting communities of color, which 100% did happen in the 2024 election. Um, and we looked into that at the time. Like obviously we take stuff like that really seriously. We talked to the people across the ecosystem who do voting rights, who do election protection, who do anti-election sabotage, election theft work, about whether there was any, reason based on what they were seeing to feel like there might be a wide scale conspiracy that could have meaningfully altered the 2024 results. And the very strong conclusion was that what we saw across the country, based on really different voting system, right? Some manual, some electronic, some, administered by different actors, et cetera, et cetera. The swings were consistent with an overall swing around the country and not consistent with something like a targeted fraud intended to alter a specific outcome in the presidential. And so I don't know what's going on with the specific stuff that's circulating around Tennessee. I would obviously defer very much to the campaign and their analysis of what's going on. If they're pushing for a recount, then we would want to like understand what's the justification that they're seeing there. But fundamentally, it's not unusual given the current electoral patterns that you bank a really, really big advantage with early voting with Democratic voters and then see a pretty red surge in election day voters to the right, or for Republicans. And so I would want to understand a significantly different amount of evidence in order to conclude that there's any kind of organized fraud going on here.
And I would be pretty cautious about claiming any kind of election
Yeah.
subterfuge because the other side absolutely wants to engage in this kind of behavior, and they are very worried about the midterms. And we should really have the goods before we make claims that there's anything going on with elections.
Yeah. Well, I actually I would shift that around. We're incredibly worried about election
Yes,
sabotage. Like
exactly.
this is one of the central things that we are thinking about
Yep,
as we head into next year. This is not an administration that intends to simply be chastened by the voters and
yep,
have a
yep.
Democratic House of Representatives and a Democratic Senate take office
Yeah.
in the normal way that we see a progression of power. They're going to do everything they can to rig the rules up front. They are going to do everything they can to create chaos that they then use as like the grounds for a bunch of legal challenges that they'll try to get upheld by the MAGA Supreme Court. They're going to throw the whole playbook at us. So it is not a lack of concern about the very real risk of election sabotage that puts us here. It is a desire to be extremely precise about the concerns that we have and the interventions that we need to make that puts us here. Because if we concede or if we predetermine that the 2024 election was sabotaged, what we're actually doing is mostly demotivating our own voters rather than actually creating the conditions for a successful repelling of an election sabotage attempt in 2026.
Y'all, Leah spends,
I
I
spend a
don't,
lot of time on
she
this.
spends a lot of time thinking about election sabotage, and for the midterms, it's what she brings up just about every day over dinner.
Yeah.
And the kids love it. Okay. Let's move on to Hugh's question. I was in Washington, D.C. on November 19th, 22nd for the Remove the Regime rally. It was incredible. We visited the offices of congressional representatives, rallied for veterans, and ended with a huge peaceful rally and march through the Capitol on Saturday. The message was clear: impeach, convict, and remove Trump and his entire lawless, corrupt regime. I believe it's time to hold a national protest like no kings with the theme of impeach slash convict slash remove, but it needs to be headlined in DC. We cannot wait a single day longer or until the midterms while they continue their assault on our democracy and the rule of law. What are your thoughts? I think we talked about this also a couple weeks ago, but Leah,
Yeah.
thoughts on a national protest on impeachment?
So first of all, I just want to say one thing up front, which is that I think the nature of this Q&A invites us to essentially comment on the strategies of other organizations in a way that sometimes I feel like a little bit uncomfortable with, right? Because I think sometimes it can be like, why aren't you doing this? And we'll say our justification, but that's not intended to be a reflection on others. We think that people have to try a lot of different things. Some of the stuff that we'll do will work. Some of the stuff that other people will do will work. Like that is good. So with all of that said in advance, we are generally pretty skeptical of the role of kind of the large DC march as a means for change, for delivering change outside of an overarching strategy for moving the decision makers associated with a specific demand. And part of the reason why we're skeptical about that is because when you get a big number of people in DC, that's actually often less impressive or concerning to individual lawmakers than having a smaller but very significant number of people in their own district or state. A representative from Pennsylvania looks at a big crowd in DC and assumes that those people are not from their state. A representative from Michigan says, oh, they're not from my state, et cetera, et cetera. And they don't know, obviously, like, yes, it helps to arrange some office visits with folks to confirm that there are some constituents. But really, what we should assume is that if you want to influence somebody in Michigan, a big bunch of people in Michigan is going to get their attention faster than a crowd on the mall. And that's a pretty consistent part of our strategy, where we really do. Part of why we organize people wherever they are is because the power you have really is rooted in your geography as a constituent. And so that's kind of the general orientation that we take to DC marches. There are moments when it makes sense to kind of build towards the overwhelming pressure in DC, but they're part of an overarching strategy rather than kind of the way you inject the demand in the first place. On impeachment, man, I feel like I'm just kind of doing all the.
You're doing great. I'm loving it.
Okay.
You're getting a lot of plaudits in the chat. Everybody's like, Leah's actually very right, 100%.
Thank you. Thank you, chat. I appreciate that. Now on impeachment, here's how we land on impeachment. We think that Donald Trump 100% deserves to be impeached. We think he commits an impeachable crime roughly once a week and has merited impeachment since basically day 3 of his time in the Oval Office this time around. So we have no disagreement at all about whether impeachment is merited. Where we sometimes end up in a little bit of creative tension is around how much you're emphasizing an impeachment demand relative to other demands or relative to other messages right now, while we're still in the period where we're trying to fracture their coalition and build ours. And the basic thing that I would say here is that if I've got 2 sentences to make a demand or make a communication to a voter who's not yet with us, who maybe voted for Trump or stayed at home, I am going to focus on something that is directly personally impactful to them, right? Whether that is about mass deportations or whether that is about the cost of living or whether that is about kind of illegal actions that threaten them personally and corruption. I want to focus on stuff that is going to make them feel like they have a really personal stake in what happens next in order to fracture some of those people off of their side and pull more of those people into ours. And so, when we make decisions about which issues we're foregrounding, which demands we're foregrounding, a lot of the question right now is how do we mitigate harm and how do we build our coalition and break apart theirs? Because what we see ourselves as doing right now is building towards the kind of mass popular pro-democracy movement strength that will allow us to absolutely win the midterms in a massive way that makes 2026 a synonym for an absolute rout, and then enforce those election results when and if they try to challenge them. That is where we see ourselves driving towards. That gives us the votes for a massive accountability push in 2027, which absolutely should include impeachment and should also include a bunch of investigations, subpoenas, charges against all of the people who have colluded in this corrupt agenda, because there's Donald Trump, right, who is in office. But there are so many MAGA Heritage Foundation hacks who have been part of putting this together, part of doing unbelievably illegal shit. There are so many corporations that have been on board as long as they get their piece. We have to go after all of those folks. It's not just about impeachment. It's about the entire collective system that has gotten us here.
You were cooking there. You were cooking, Leah. You were cooking. Look at the emojis were in great. Oh yeah, just nothing but snaps. That was right on. There was a fair amount of disagreement early on, though, when you said that Trump commits a crime every week, and a lot of people thought it was more like every day.
That's fair.
No, that's straight. 100%. Other than that, perfect. Okay, Kim asks, the Trump administration is making it clear they want Paramount to buy Warner Brothers/Discovery. How can we protest this in advance? Would creating an online petition of people who commit to canceling HBO and boycott other products if Paramount offers accepted, get the message across. Similar to how all the Disney Hulu cancellations helped get Jimmy Kimmel back on the air. Waiting until after deal is made could be too late. It's an interesting challenge, Kim. Yeah. I'm somebody who tends to be really skeptical of online petitions. Like it's not that they can never do good, but often online petitions in the political spaces are tools to gather people's email addresses or contact information and then ask them for money later, rather than a tool for actually applying pressure. There are versions of an online petition that can be used to like gather and present to the target to make the point. And I hear you that if you wait until after this is approved, is it possible
Mhm.
to provide the pushback? Leah, what are your thoughts on?
I actually think so. Just to link this to my previous comments, I think this is the kind of place where the regime is stumbling enough that you actually should be starting to ask Democrats to use their collective power to create a very clear understanding that there are going to be consequences for this kind of like super corrupt deal, right? Like we have seen some
Yeah,
early indications that, Democrats are saying, oh, we're going to investigate this action. We're going to investigate that action. We're going to see if there was a quid pro quo here. We're going to try to, dig in on X or Y wildly corrupt, move by the administration.
yeah.
This is the kind of place where you really want to start to create some sense of, you might be trying to get away with this now, but accountability is coming, and it's coming in like, you know, less
Soon.
than, yeah, it's coming in 13 months. It's coming in, what a pretty reasonable amount of time that you need to start planning around. So I think there's a piece of this that,
Yeah.
might be about direct consumer pressure, but the other piece of this is again around pushing our Democrats via the primary process and via our advocacy to be really committed to the kind of robust accountability agenda where every corporation is genuinely worried about the consequences they are going to face for having been aggressive enablers of the Trump agenda during this time.
This reminds me, we talked about this last week, Leah. This I think about a month or so ago, Jamie Dimon,
Oh, yes.
no resistance hero, but Jamie Dimon, JP Morgan Chase fame, answered a question about why did JP Morgan not contribute to the construction of the East Wing, the Epstein Ballroom, whatever we're going to call it. There's a long list of companies that have contributed to this. And this is a private effort that Trump is basically shaking down companies saying, give me money for this. And it just reeks of corruption. There's some kind of wink and a nod. You give me money and we'll have more friendly terms. And these are folks like it's Meta, it's Google, it's the Facebook is Meta, it's Apple, it's Coinbase from the crypto space. It's the Winklevoss twins.
Yeah.
So a lot of the tech community ponied up. Palantir, some of the consulting agencies, they ponied up as well. But JP Morgan didn't. And the reason Jamie Dimon gave was not because I'm standing up to the authoritarianism or because I'm against the regime. Obviously not. He said, look, we got to be worried about how this is going to look. And we don't want to be, more or less, he said, we don't want to be investigated by a future DOJ. So a couple things there. One, he knows it looks like corruption. Two, he knows there will be a different DOJ in the future. Three, uh, he knows that there will be investigations. And so the smart move from a purely cynical business leader in his case was, now we're not going to donate. The good that we get from scratching Trump's back now is outweighed by the bad that could come later.
I will add a
Yeah.
fourth, a
Yeah.
four. He said it out loud
Yeah.
to on the record.
Yeah.
That's a really interesting development
Yeah.
because that is, the business sector has not been, they have not been profiles in courage over
No.
the last year. And indeed, they've been, running as fast as they can to, for the most part, to enable Donald Trump to advance his agenda, to, get their piece while the getting is good. And so the fact again, that you have somebody who is a little bit of a bellwether, right? He was MAGA curious as Donald Trump was getting elected. He tries to act a little bit more friendly to Democrats when he thinks they're going to be in power. Who is saying this stuff out loud? That's another sign of like people can see where the wind is blowing and they're trying to go in that direction.
But I would say every single person and every single organization that contributed to the East Wing should be investigated.
Yeah.
There should be subpoenas, there should be hearings. We should get to the bottom of it. Was this blatant corruption? Was this quid pro quo? I don't know, but it sure looks like it. And so when there is a Democratic House and a Democratic Senate, and when there is a Democratic president with a different DOJ, they should be investigated. And that should become clear not in 2029 or not in 2027, It should become clear now as we head into the primaries. Every single Democrat running for a position of power should talk about here is how we're going to hold these corrupt and lawless regime power holders accountable in the immediate term. And that will build up more folks who are saying outright, look, I'm not going to contribute to X or Y effort because I don't want to be investigated by the next DOJ or the next House Oversight Committee or the next member of Congress who gets elected. So great, Leah, just underlining your point, pushing in the primaries is a good time to do this. And not particularly ideological. This isn't left right. This is, are you going to fight back against this regime or not? Okay. Cosmo, did I just click one?
I underscore
I
that
would
point
love
because
for you to underscore that
I
point.
do think that one thing that we experience in primary discourse is that it often gets reduced to kind of left versus right or left, how left, how center left, et cetera. And we really think of there being two axes, right? Like there's one axis of, how far to the left are you, right? Center left, left, whatever, progressive, whatever. And then the other axis is how much do you think that we are in an emergency that
Yes,
merits all of the tools in the toolbox, every creative action you can think of that requires shouting at the top of your lungs, getting the word out, organizing people, using your leverage, threatening consequences, right? And you can have some people who are pretty centrist by our standards who think this is an emergency
that's
that
right.
requires screaming at the top of your
That's
lungs. And
right.
you can have some people who are like to the left who don't think this is an emergency. And what we're really going for is shifting everyone as far up that this is an emergency quadrant as we possibly can.
That's right. And that's what primaries are good for. Cosmo Bates asks, do you have any specific advice or plans to take advantage of the weakened Trump regime while the getting is good? This all kind of connects, Cosmo. So, one thing that I am worried about is as the Trump ship starts visibly sinking and it starts to become a fait accompli that we are going to take the House, that we might take the Senate, that this regime is it's a lame duck regime and it doesn't have power. What you're going to see are a lot of Democrats who believe this is status quo politics start talking about how now we need to come together with some common sense proposals, reach across the aisle and pass some good, name it, immigration reform, infrastructure reform, crime bills, budgets, tax cuts, whatever it is, that is going to be a force out there. And if you want to take advantage of the weakened Trump regime now, you need to not treat its weakened state as an inevitability, but as the result of active resistance from around the country that has been going on for more than a year. And if we are going to continue successfully pushing back against this regime, we need fighters in Congress that put them in their place as soon as they can. That means on January 3rd of 2027, when we have a Democratic House and a Democratic Senate, I do not want to hear from the Democratic Speaker of the House or the Democratic Majority Leader how they are reaching across the aisle to the Republicans to do some kind of bipartisan deal that Trump supports. I want to hear how they're stopping the corruption and the lawlessness and the unconstitutional behavior of this regime and how that is their top priority. But you're not going to get that without intervention because status quo politics is status quo for a reason. It is the dominant force. If you want something different, you got to fight for it. The place to fight for it is the primaries.
Right.
Okay. Christine Wolf asks, where can we find good updated facts on immigration like one? Number of people wrongfully detained in each state. Two, length of stay average for wrongfully detained. Three, number of people detained that were following the rules they were given by the courts. And four, number of detainees with and without a criminal record.
This is a really good question, and I wish I had a good answer for it. I am going to invite folks in the comment section to shout out either sources that you are using or reporters who are covering this that you think other people should have more attention to. I really
What about some, I think that's right, but some favorite organizations representing immigrants and fighting for immigrant rights?
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously, we start with our friends at United We Dream and the and FIRM, the Immigration Reform Network.
Yep.
I actually will take this opportunity to also shout out our Giving Tuesday fundraiser because, it's still the same week. We can continue to keep the good vibes going, but for Giving Tuesday this week, we asked our list and our socials to raise money for the Neighbors Defense Fund. This is a fund that is providing support to immigrants who have been detained by this administration who need legal services. Legal services are expensive. There is a massive escalation in the need for them. This is intended to just help to meet and fill that gap. A bunch of direct service providers across the country have seen huge cuts in funding over the last few years. Funders have pulled back on supporting immigrants and immigrant rights, some out of, complicated strategic reasons and some out of sheer fear of this administration. So we want to try to help to step up and fill the gap there. Meanwhile, I am monitoring the chat to see if we've got any folks who are offering any helpful sources. We'll come back to you on that. Let's make a pin to come back on that next week.
Okay, great. Just remind, I don't know if we've announced this in another place, but folks will remember a few weeks ago we sent out a fundraising appeal for LaMonica MacIver, the congresswoman from New Jersey who is being targeted by the Trump regime. She had the gall to stand up to this regime and show up outside an ICE facility to demand to actually
To do her normal
to do
congressional
her
oversight.
actual job of oversight, something that the Republicans are not doing. Trump and his lackeys are now going after MacIver. We sent a fundraiser out for her legal costs. Indivisible is ponying up more than $150,000 for her legal costs. Incredible work. Thank you to this entire movement. I really was very proud to see that. I think she was one of the earliest ones to step forward, and there's been so much that I think it's being lost in the mix, but the Indivisibles have been standing up to support her. So just want to shout out everybody for being there for her.
Great.
Uh,
We got time for one more.
One more question. Okay, about Mike Johnson. MAGA Mike Johnson. Why don't House members call for a motion to vacate against Mike Johnson? I think the answer is to what end for the
Yeah.
Republicans? A lot of folks are upset with Mike Johnson on the Republican side. A lot of folks are frustrated with his leadership and how much he is just simply backing up Trump and not standing up for the House. And also, they're between a rock and a hard place. It's not clear who would take over, why that would be better for them. They are nervous about the chaos that came last time they deposed a leader. Mike Johnson was kind of a dark horse candidate at the time who got this speakership. So I would be surprised if Mike Johnson gets pushed out before the next election. I think probably the thing that dethrones Mike Johnson is Democrats taking the House next November. That would be my guess.
I think that's right. I mean, we are seeing a lot of chatter about how demotivated
Yep,
people are,
that's
how
right.
freaked out they are, the possibility of more retirements, the possibility even of some early retirements that could further throw the majority into, so there's certainly discontent. But if you think about exactly how traumatic the process of getting Mike Johnson was for the House majority or for the Republicans, right? Like 8,000 votes and all that, all of the rigmarole. And you think about the fact that, fundamentally they're pretty fractured. Like they have genuine disagreements. And so the question would then be, can you get another person who has got uniform support across the caucus in a caucus that is pretty freaking divided?
I did like Marjorie Taylor Greene. It was a real FU to both Trump and Mike Johnson to resign in January. And I'm no Marjorie Taylor Greene fan, but you get 4 or 5 more to do that, and then you're
Yeah.
in business.
Yep.
I tend to think that's pretty unlikely. And look, we're going to stomp them electorally a year from now. We are absolutely going to crush them electorally everywhere. We're going to take the House. We're going to take the Senate. And you know why? Not because it's foreordained, not because it's predestined, not because that's just the way it's going to be. It's going to happen because we're going to build a Democratic Party that people actually respect and believe in during the primary season, and then we're going to have the biggest wave of GOTV next GOTV cycle in September and October and November of next year that we've seen in this country in modern American history. That's the plan. That's how we win. And then on January 3rd, we're going to hold this regime accountable. People are going to jail. People are going to be investigated, and people are going to be booted out of office. That's what we're going to do on the ground together. We're going to do it with our Indivisible group. So welcome Porto Indivisible and Barcelona Indivisible and everybody else who joined in the past couple of weeks. Really great to be back here with y'all. Leah, any closing inspiring thoughts for the team?
I think you landed it.
Oh, well, love
I'll
that.
let
Love
you
that.
know.
Okay, we'll see you again. We'll see you again next Thursday at 3 p.m. Eastern as per usual. Thanks, y'all. Great to be back
Thanks,
with you.
yeah.